I love feedback, and I think feedback is the most important thing you can have as a leader. While it's always really important to have policies in place, we can find the humanity and the kindness in interactions, and the policy doesn't always have to take precedence.
Yeah. How are you like educating your customer that this is the best product for them?
With especially first-time baby parents, we are the experts, whereas with kids customers, parents are the experts.
Hey friends, welcome to Above the Fold podcast. I'm your host, Jess Servion. We're going to be talking about everything in your customer's journey. You're going to learn things about customer experience, brand experience, and marketing secrets that help you drive your brand success. So stay tuned, buckle up, and let's get into the episode.
Welcome back to another episode of Above the Fold with me, Jess, your host. This week, I am joined by my friend Lauren Schorr, Director of Customer Experience at Nestig. Lauren, tell everybody about you, but what Nestig is.
Sure. So I guess I'll start with Nestig. So Nestig is a direct-to-consumer children's furniture and decor brand. So we started off as just being about the nursery. We started off just having cribs, actually, and then expanded to other soft goods in the nursery and then furniture in the nursery. And then recently, I would say like about 6 months ago, expanded into the kids space, which is really exciting. And that includes twin beds and things for like older kids as well.
Yeah.
So that's great. And I've been with Nestig since the beginning. I was their first hire.
I love that.
Yeah.
We love a brand that values CX.
Yes.
And brings on CX early into a company.
Love it. And this has been like, this, I think, colors the entire experience of Nestig.
Yeah.
Is that our founders chose to do that first and prioritize CX from the get-go, and that hasn't changed. And I think that it leads to my success, it leads to my team's success, and customers being much happier because they can tell. That's something customers can tell, I think.
Totally. And we'll get into it. But I think also like the moms, like there's a lot of questions. Like you're, you know, producing a product that is for their like precious bundle of joy, you know, like they need to make sure that it's like the right products for them, right?
Of course, definitely.
But before we get into that though, I actually just wanted to ask like just quick backstory about Nestig. Do you like, why did the founders decide to go into this type of realm, like baby products?
Definitely, yeah. So the founders met at Columbia Business School. Yeah. One of them is Brazilian, the other is American. And the Brazilian thought that the furniture that he was seeing in Brazil was really, really special and the type of thing that he noticed we were missing in the American market. So he went to Columbia with this idea and he and Sarah met and really connected. And Sarah had some experience in the baby space as well already.
Oh, interesting.
So they connected over that and then founded Nestig together.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so changing the baby industry.
Yeah.
One crib at a time.
Exactly.
When was Nestig founded?
2020. August 2020.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Nestig actually came into my ether because my best friend had her first baby, my sweet, sweet nephew, Ryder. And she was like searching for like the right products for her. And like, and my best friend, her name's Amanda. Ryder's mom is named Amanda. She's very thorough. That's the best way to describe it. It's not even like a motherly thorough, like a very thorough person.
Yes.
Okay. And so she discovered Nestig and chose Nestig as like the crib of choice for like the growth of Ryder. And so that's actually how I knew, like before I even met you.
Wow.
I knew about Nestig because like of the amount of research that Amanda went through.
That's amazing. And I think that is like a story that we hear often. You know, I think we might get into this later, but the difference between baby parents and kids parents and the difference, one of the main differences is that baby parents, a lot of times we're talking about first-time parents and they have 9 months to dream and to, you know, think about what's coming and to build their registries and to talk to other people who have babies and to really, really be overwhelmed with all of this information of like, not only are they expecting a new member of their family, but they also have to get all of these new products for their room, get things that don't even have to do with Nestig, like formula or, you know, car seats, whatever it might be. And so there's just all of these decisions that go into that. So many. And there's so much information out there about what's safe, what isn't safe, what certifications you should look for. So I think we see different types of customers in this journey, whether that's someone that already knows exactly what they want. They saw us maybe on Instagram and they knew from the get-go that this is what they wanted, so maybe they don't have as many questions, versus someone who is very thorough, like Amanda might have been, and you know has a spreadsheet of all of the available things that they're looking at and all the certifications and all the specs and all of that. So we definitely see that from customers, and we want to be able to cater to any of those types of parents.
I have so many questions, but before we continue on the Nestig stuff, I also want to make sure that like the audience, let's talk a little bit about you first, and you as like a CX leader. Sure. I'm so interested, like I know your background, but I want you to tell everybody else your background. Tell me about your background. What did you do before Nestig?
I think a lot of people that come into CX have a little bit of what they would call like a different journey, and I am no exception to that. So I grew up doing theater and musical theater. I studied musical theater in college. I was such a theater kid, and once I graduated, I moved to New York, and I was auditioning here, and the entire time I was living here, but also even before living here, I was supporting myself doing very customer-based jobs, mostly working in restaurants. And you know, actors are auditioning and sometimes booking work, but a lot of the time, you know, we have to support ourselves doing other things. So that was what I did for the first several years that I was in New York, was working these customer-facing jobs in addition to auditioning all day and booking work where I could. And so through time, I started realizing how much I was looking forward to like my day job and how much more I was enjoying that and finding fulfillment from that than I was from acting. And so this really got me thinking, like, I love customers. I love helping people. And I love the sort of business sense that I was getting from working in restaurants, of understanding not only the customer's perspective, but also the back of house, the business, how all of these things like go together. And I noticed a difference in myself that, you know, while other people that were actors were bemoaning, you know, having to like clock into their restaurant job, it was giving me, you know, it was invigorating me. And so this started to pique something in my mind of, okay, when I'm sort of retiring from the acting world, I think this is something that I'd like to go into. And so that's where my CX journey was born.
I love that story. I love that story a lot. Like, I mean, I talk about this a lot, right? Like my background was art school, and then I went into like banking and all these other like different customer service types of roles, right? But I think what's so important about what you mentioned in your story is that I think to be a good CX leader, it's not just about like understanding, okay, I'm a leader and I'm a people leader. It's also understanding like, when you look at like the structure of your customer support, your customer journey, you also like can fare really well coming from like an operations mindset, right? And like, and what you were talking about, like the back of the house and like that type of industry, and like understanding how like an operation of a business is running, really gave you great skill set to do this really well, and also go into that director role.
Absolutely. And I think parts of acting as well did too, because part of, I think what made me successful in a startup was the fact that my whole acting career, there was no structure whatsoever. And I had to create that structure for myself. No one was, you know, I didn't have a manager or an agent or anything. So I was the one that was like proactively going to these auditions and getting my name out there and things like that. And really like going to classes and networking and all of that. So I think that mindset is so similar to that of a startup that also really played a factor.
Totally. It's like, to thrive in a startup in general, I think you like any of your team members, yourself, like anybody working in it needs to have like that individual entrepreneurial mindset. You know, it's like it's a drive that's just very different. It's like nobody's going to tell you what to do. You need to go and like figure out how to do it.
Absolutely. Or take that additional step of like, maybe you do know what to do, but if you sense an opportunity, go for it.
Yes.
Right. And that's so encouraged. And that's really encouraged at Nestig. And that's one of the reasons I love working there.
How do you encourage your team members to like always kind of embody that and embrace that type of like entrepreneurial mindset? I was saying entrepreneurial mindset, but it's like that drive.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I think it's a combination of things, but I think one thing that builds trust with your team is really considering any ideas that the team brings, right? And the team's on the front lines at this point. I'm not the one talking to, 60 customers a day anymore. That's my team. My team is really the expert at this point. And so when they come to me with ideas or, insights that they have, really taking those into consideration. And that doesn't mean that every single time we'll be able to change something, but I think giving your team that confidence that they'll be listened to. And, ultimately, a lot of the time it does result in a change, whether that means like setting expectations clearer on the website about certain things, changing copy on something to make it clearer for customers, things like that. Or, when it's not a change we're going to pursue, giving my team also like a little bit of context as to why that is.
Yes.
And, maybe what we would want to see to be able to move more in that direction. So maybe it's not even a no, but it's a not yet. And so I think that really builds confidence. And that encourages the team, if they see their ideas, really being considered and acted upon, to continue. And I think like one of my favorite things about Nestig is how quickly we do take feedback into account, whether that's from customers, from my team, from me, from one of the other teams. And we're still in that phase where we can move quickly on things. So
love moving quickly.
I just think that's like, that is so heartwarming to me. And I think it's something that the team can feel. And I think it's something customers can feel too, because I've had interactions with customers before where they say, wow, I can't believe you already updated the website to include this thing that I just brought to your attention. And it's like, it was an opportunity. Of course we wanted to.
God, I love that because it just instills also like customer trust if you can like move quickly on that feedback.
Right.
It's like once you, because it happens, it truthfully happens. Once you move to like being no longer a startup, being more bigger, don't want to call it corporate because it's not necessarily corporate. It's like just more like bigger. What happens is you can't move as quickly.
Right.
There's like hierarchy of like feedback on like getting the website changed.
Right.
It's like it's harder. So it's like these moments within that startup and instilling like just kind of like that like feedback is really good.
Yeah.
It will trickle into like your growth.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And that's how it was really at the beginning of Nestig. When I was the only employee, I was the only person talking to every single customer. One of the things that I kept in mind and that I knew was my job was to instill trust in customers, not only in our products, but in the fact that we were like a real company, because our first few customers really took a chance on us. They were the first people to be purchasing these cribs for their babies. And we had to really make sure that they felt that safe, exactly. That they were making a good choice.
Yeah, totally. Okay, I have so many questions, but before we get there, I also want to like kind of touch on this because you said this in one of your comments. You said how like it used to just be you and then like you built your team. One thing that we like never touch on when I like have a CX person on is how do you think about building your team? Like, so the reason I bring this up is because I do a lot of consulting with CX brands on their CX now. And it's either you're just beginning or you're at a growth and scale mode. And my techniques are just come from, just years of being a CX leader of like forecasting and doing all these things. But I'm so curious of what is your philosophy and your methods on understanding when it is that you need to make those additional hires?
It's a great question. And I think you have to balance so many different things too, right? To be able to add headcount. One thing I do want to back up quickly. One thing that I think is different about my team is that my team is fully full-time. So
Love.
we don't use a BPO.
Love it.
It's all full-time
Yeah.
CX, and we're all in the New York office together. So we get to work together, collaborate together.
Mhm.
And I think this is essential
Mhm.
to Nestig because we have so many products and so many categories and just so much knowledge that the team needs to have, that I think having it in-house is really the way to go there.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think, sorry, that's context to talk.
No, it sparked another
through,
question for me. So keep going, my
to
girl.
talk through, hiring decisions.
Yeah.
Because of course, when you're thinking about hiring one more full-time person, that's a different decision than, changing a contract within a BPO or things like that. So I think one thing that I've learned through time is that sometimes it's good to forecast. It's always good to forecast ahead.
Yeah.
But sometimes things that you think are going to really change the day-to-day for your team won't.
Yeah.
So sometimes I think this happens with our products too, because it's a longer tail effect of like customers seeing the product and maybe not purchasing it immediately versus like fashion.
Yeah.
So, customers might they might see it on social or something and not purchase it for like 3 or 4 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we have a launch, that doesn't necessarily mean that all of a sudden we're going to have all of this additional work for my team. This might come way later.
Right.
So this has been an interesting thing for me to learn too, is expanding into Canada or expanding into kids doesn't necessarily come with like a huge change to my team immediately, but it's something that you do want to keep in mind as we grow, because we're seeing incremental growth.
Yeah.
And so it's nice because that means that we're not seeing huge spikes, which is great. And that's easier to plan for.
Yeah, totally. It's like more gradual.
It's more gradual. So it's more figuring out the best time to hire, thinking about whether it is a must do now because we're drowning versus a strategic hire that we want to, set the team up for success in a different way moving forward, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to go back to like how you said that like everybody's in-house.
Yes.
And I think that collaboration is really key. I think that like some brands can definitely do BPOs and some can't.
Definitely.
Like when I launched Feastables in particular, I knew I was going to have a huge influx of inquiries, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to hire fast enough. So I had a BPO.
Sure.
But then my whole goal for that team was to come back in-house and just give it a gradual, like slow roll into that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know if I can say this, but basically what happened was we ended up getting the BPO, like doing the BPO, and then like we had a large team, but then we kind of found like some key players that decided when I put up the roles that were available, they like applied for them. That's the part that I didn't know.
Okay.
But whatever.
Yeah.
But my point is, that was like, yes, I share the same philosophy.
Yeah.
I do believe in in-house over like outsourcing. I think it's a fine line.
Yes. And I think that look, not everyone's going to have that buy-in from their leaders, and that's okay too, right? You have to work within the constraints of your business. But as I was saying, I think like that's something that my founders really prioritized from the get-go, and that's been really nice because I haven't had to fight for it in the same way that I would at maybe a different company.
Yeah. I mean, even going back to that, like what were your founders' philosophy like on CX? Like I'd love to hear a little bit more on like why you were the first hire CX was.
Yeah. I think, as I was talking about a little bit earlier, my role specifically coming in for CX was helping to build trust in our brand, not because we didn't have it, but because we were new, and you always have to build trust when you're a new company. I think things that I've loved learning from my founders is that, and this has really informed my approach as well, is that while it's always really important to have policies in place, we can find the humanity and the kindness in interactions, and the policy doesn't always have to take precedence.
Yeah.
So, we're talking to people in like sometimes stressful, sometimes sad situations, and you want to find the humanity in that. And again, this is different than every company. This is not something that everyone can do, and that's totally understandable. But I think when we're talking about baby products, it's really important, and kids products as well. And so finding that kindness and that humanity in the interactions, and also really thinking about the actual problem that we're looking to solve for customers. So when a customer reaches out, what is the actual thing that they need? And can we find a creative way to give that to them, even in the short term, while we're working on solving the problem long term? And so like that sort of creative problem solving was also something that our founders, Sarah and Guy, I don't think I've said their names, imbued into Nestig before I got there. And that's really informed my approach. And I think it's a really liberating approach, even though it definitely sometimes makes things a little bit more difficult than like a black and white approach.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I do think it like does make it a little bit more difficult, but I think it makes it more rewarding.
Absolutely.
It's like one of those things you work really hard for.
Yeah.
And then once you get it and you attain it, it's like, God, I fucking worked really hard for this. And like, feels good, you know?
Yeah.
So, but I like that approach. Like, truthfully, it's like commendable. I like that approach of that, like prioritizing CX. Like, I mean, granted, like this is, you know, my philosophy on CX is very much it's not just a support function. It's like marketing. It's your brand strategy. So many other pieces of the pie.
Definitely.
You know, so it's like, you know, my heart is singing.
Yeah. And, you know, it's important for CX to be, it's important for CX to be involved in those decisions too. And so, you know, I love that my founders bring me in to ask about, you know, we're thinking about doing this, like what are the implications for customers if we did this versus this, and trusting the opinion of CX and thinking about customers first through decisions is really important to customer experience too. It's not just about answering tickets, but also like thinking through everything that you're doing through the lens of the customer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Thinking everything that you're doing through the lens of the customer. So that actually leads me to one of my other questions that I wanted to ask you. So when we're talking about the customer's journey, right? And you're talking about like how feedback is like really important and you make changes to it.
Yeah.
I'm really curious about like when your customers come in and they come into your journey from like that awareness and they're going through like conversion, right? How do you like with amongst your team or even just like providing feedback to those that like run the website?
Yeah.
How are you like educating your customer that this is the best product for them?
Definitely. I think it's interesting because customers are finding us through so many different touch points, right? I do think the vast majority of customers are finding us through social media. And so I do think over time, our strategy has changed to be more CX focused when it comes to social media, where we're talking about the actual practicality of the product. So, you know, with cribs as an example, because that's our longest product that we've had, how exactly it transforms from a mini crib to a full crib to a toddler bed, what that means as a customer. This means that you only need to buy one thing for 5 years. That's pretty cool. And then like drawing the customer in through that, right? That's what makes us special. And I think another thing that we've done a good job of recently with CX is that we have an 18-year warranty on our cribs.
Wow.
And
what
we were finding in the early years that customers like didn't necessarily know about this, when this is like one of the best things about our product. Like that's incredible. That's industry leading.
Yeah.
And so how do we also make sure that customers come in knowing that, so that they understand that we're really here to help them through the entire time that they're owning our product?
Yeah.
And so I think that's really important. And then once they're on the website, you were asking about like how we design, like what information is on there. All of the PDPs, anytime we launch a new product, all of that is like, I take a look at the copy and I'm making sure that it has like a customer focused, that it has the information that we know that customers are going to ask. And then once we launch the product, are they asking different questions? And if so, how can we make that clearer? And then we put that on both the PDP and our help center, and, you know, try to have all that information where the customer needs it so that they're able to find that.
Yeah, I love that. Going back to the warranty piece of it, it's so interesting because, I mean, it makes sense from like a baby product, right? Just 18 years. Yeah. Like all I was thinking about is like, do you think people are still using, like, tell me about the product itself.
Yeah. So the product, so the cribs specifically, are the 18-year warranty. Everything else is 2 years. But cribs, as I was talking about a little bit before, most of our cribs are 3-in-1, which means that they transform from a mini crib, which can be used for newborns up to around like 3 to 6 months, depending on the length of the baby, to full cribs, which can be used for quite a long time. Honestly, a lot of parents like to keep even like toddlers, older toddlers in there until they absolutely can't anymore, because it's helpful to have them not be able to climb out.
Yeah.
To the toddler bed, which can be used till around like age 5.
Wow.
So 18 years, of course, is longer than that. But we wanted to, I won't say we, because this was before my time, but I think Sarah and Guy were thinking about, using it for another member of the family, if they were to have a second child, third child even. And just that, 18 years just shows our commitment to the product.
Yeah.
And being there for our customers, like if they need anything.
Yeah, I love that. It's like really turning a customer in for a customer for life.
Yeah.
Not just like, you're in baby products, you got this one thing. Because like baby products overall, like you buy them.
Right.
And then so quickly you're like, it's becoming a hand-me-down or somebody else, you know? Like, so, being able to like stand behind your product for like, if you plan to have like multiple children, whatever, I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about like your transition from baby products to kids products.
Yeah.
Like tell me about the like newest product advancements.
Yeah. So the first launch for kids was our kids beds, which are twin beds. They're really cute.
Really?
Yes. So we have some that are more standard, which are based on like our cribs. So they're like sort of like grown-up versions of the cribs, like in bed form. But then we have some really delightful ones. Like one looks like, it's called the camper bed, and it looks like, a camper like that you would take on the road. And then we have one that's a car bed, which is really cute. We have one that's like bungalow, that's like a little house. They're so cute.
Yeah.
So that's really fun, these like delightful products, and then being able to expand what we've created for babies and for nurseries into like a slightly more grown up world. And the other thing that's interesting about that is that with babies, of course, the babies don't have opinions yet about what types of things they're looking for the most part. But with kids, they really do. So we're looking at like, what do kids want these days? Like, is it just dinosaurs? Is it, is it fairies? Like, what is that? And we can design around that. And that's really cute too.
Cool.
Yeah.
How, and maybe you don't know this one, but like, I'm interested, like how obviously you go from like having like baby and infant products to now kids, right? What was like the consumer insights path into like saying like, we're going to go to kids? Like, was it like utilizing customer feedback from CX? Like, yeah.
So I think this was always the idea.
Okay.
So when I joined, this was something Sarah and Guy were already talking about in the 5-year plan. And I guess we are in the 5-year at this point, the 5th year of Nestig at this point. So we're, I guess, right on track for what they were thinking.
That's awesome.
But this was something they were already thinking towards and looking at our competitors in the market and, where we wanted to establish ourselves. Kids was always going to be a part of that.
Yeah.
So it's been exciting to launch and to see like the differences. And I think one thing that's really interesting about having both kids and baby now is that the customer interactions are a little bit different. And this is something that I predicted going in, that I was thinking about going in, or how are they going to be different?
Yeah.
And as I was talking about a little bit before with baby parents, they have a long time to dream. They're, it's a really aspirational, like, my life is really going to change with this baby. And they have, in a lot of cases, they have registries. And so a lot of them are gifted these products, which is very different from with kids, where maybe it's like for a birthday or something, but there's not like a specific time that the customer is purchasing for the most part. Sometimes birthday, sometimes Christmas maybe. And the customer really knows their kid at this point, whereas before they haven't even met their kid yet. So that's really interesting. The types of questions we get are different. The baby parents are much more focused on what we were talking about with your friend, like safety and, certifications and things like that. Whereas like kids' parents are more focused on, can my kid jump on this bed or things, more practical things. And then, it's been really interesting to see the differences between the two. And I think our relationship, my team's relationship to the customers is a little bit different too, because with especially first time baby parents, we are the experts. And so they're asking us, all of these questions, and we're trying to educate as best we can about how the products are going to be used and why to make certain decisions, things like that. Whereas with kids customers, the parents are the experts at that point. They know their kid. They don't need us to be the experts. They need us. They think of us as like the information source, but not necessarily like the experts on how to use the product in the same way.
Right. Okay. That's so, you're right. That behavior is so different, right? It's like when you're an infant, I mean, going back to the story of Amanda, right? Like she didn't, first child, first time mom, like, I don't know what I'm doing, but this is the best one on the market. So I'm going to go get it, And
it's a lot of word of mouth too, with that too. First time parents are hearing a lot from other parents.
Yeah. Well, actually, let's talk about Amanda's path. Sorry, Amanda, if you're tuning into this. Let's talk about Amanda's path a little bit here, because first time mom, but also her partner, he's also one of my friends. So, and I know them very well. Okay. Both of them. I introduced them. So like I was friends with him first. And so he's also like has that like kind of obsessive mindset of like wants the best of the best for things. Right. And so when they were like, pregnant with Ryder, they're like researching like Nestig, the right products, all these things, down to the changing table, down to the formula. Like it was so interesting, like watching their behavior on it, which I get, like absolutely get, like best of the best. But now Ryder is going on 2. He'll be 2 in April. And they're just like, yeah, all right. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like it's just so like that mindset shift is so different, because it's like once you know your child, like you've met your child, you've seen your child interact, you're seeing how they're like taking on the world. Like you just like know them more.
And they're a little bit less delicate, when they're like 2 or 3 years old versus like a newborn baby. So
Ryder is like running around the house. Like,
exactly. And I think
insane.
Like in a funny way, this is something that I was talking about before we launched Kids. In a funny way, like parents understand maybe that products will not be, but like how their child will interact with the product.
Yeah.
So maybe they know that like crayon's gonna get on the bed, or that their kid is gonna hang on something, things like that.
Yeah.
So it's different.
Yeah. Does the kids' beds have a 2-year and 18-year?
2-year.
Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah. Wow, so interesting though. So, going back to like just consumer insights and like feedback, I'm very curious about your methods for collecting customer feedback.
Yeah.
And like how are you utilizing that channel with the rest of the company? Like tell me your tactics.
Yeah. It's a great question. I mean, I think this is always the question, right? Like how can we make this like more defined? Right now, I'm going to do a shout out to Hark. I love Hark.
Yeah.
So we use this platform called Hark, which is the way that customers in many cases will contact us. It's a form on our website where it directs them to choose like why they're reaching out. And then it asks them like questions about whatever the reason is that can help streamline their outreach basically. And Hark is great because it collects all of these customer videos or customer audio recordings or customer photos for us in one platform, so that it's easy to go through and analyze and look for trends. So that's something that Hark is really cool and helps us with. I think also looking at like overall trends, whether that's like on products, like what type of feedback are we hearing a lot on different products. Sometimes that's really fun feedback, like, are you going to launch this in red? Or, things like that. And the product team always gets very excited about those because it's like, oh, maybe we could launch it in red, or maybe we could add this, different function to the product. So I think I really rely on my team for this too, is they talk to each other about what they're seeing, and this goes on Slack, or even just like it's something that they're talking about in the office. And it's nice because once we start to see patterns, that's when we say, okay, is this something that we want to change? Or, let's make sure that this gets escalated to the appropriate team.
Yeah.
And that's nice. And I think like that as a leader is a really important skill to build in your team.
Yes.
I think it's as someone, I think all of us have been like a CX associate before and been answering hundreds of tickets. And it's so easy once you see 1, 2, 3 tickets with the same subject to think, oh my gosh, this is a huge thing that's happening. But you don't have the overall context of whether, how many customers have received this product, et cetera. And so, my team has become really savvy in terms of understanding, okay, maybe I received 3 tickets about this, but we sold 2,000 of these products. So, where should this go in terms of prioritization?
Yeah.
And like, that's a important skill to develop in the team as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you actually segued right into the question I wanted to ask you like next, because I was like, as you were talking, I was thinking about this. I think what's really important as CX leaders, the difference between being an associate, a manager, or director, VP, like all these stuff, is yes, we're no longer in the queues, right? But it's not beneath us to be in the queues.
No.
But it's like we all have to spend time in the queues to understand the customer. And what's really important from like a leadership perspective is like being able to empower your team to like bring up that feedback, not just be like, oh, this is interesting, I'm just like dealing with this thing and like never saying anything. But I also wanted to dig a little bit further because you as a leader, I would love to hear what are your methods to empowering your team to not even just like feedback, just like overall growth. Like how do you think of that as a leader?
So I think this goes back to my acting background, and I always joke that this is where this was born, but I love feedback. And I think feedback is the most important thing you can have as a leader.
Yeah.
And I think the less people worry about feedback, the more feedback they're given, like they'll become more and more comfortable in their roles.
Yes.
When it's just an open communication, and they're like expecting, structured feedback.
Yeah.
Or not even just structured, but I think structured feedback is important too, not just on the fly feedback. So going back to your question, I think for me, in terms of helping my team to grow, feedback is essential because what better way to grow than to understand like where your strengths are and where improvement opportunities are. And so I have been really excited about how excited my team is about QA, and we'll do QA once a month, personally, like each individual person. And then, being able to talk through improvement opportunities and what's going well. And I think the team, what I love about it is it helps the team understand that I am seeing what they're doing really well. It's not going unnoticed and they're doing a great job. And then also it doesn't leave all these questions about like, how can I get to the next level? Because this is something we're talking about every month. So we're not just waiting until like performance reviews twice a year to talk about like, how can I improve? How can I get promoted? That's something that we're talking about frequently.
Yeah.
And I think that open and honest feedback just makes every conversation easier because it's not something that you're like holding in and waiting until like a specific moment to give. Yeah. So I think that's really essential. And I think feedback and then also just setting expectations. That's something that I've really learned throughout my career is like helping to set really clear expectations for the team in terms of how you do get promoted and what each level on the team looks like and what the expectations are there.
Yeah.
And even expectations from the day to day, like understanding, how do I know I'm doing a good job?
Yeah. And as Nestig grows, like how are you thinking about like positions within CX as a whole? Because I think that a lot of times like CX gets a bad rap that like there's not a lot of growth opportunities, but there's so many growth opportunities.
Absolutely. This is a really exciting time, I think, for my team. So we do have someone that was recently promoted to a level that we hadn't had before. And it's been really exciting to create this role and to, she's still working on tickets, but not, not as much.
Like not every second of the day.
Yeah, and being able to work on like bigger projects, and actually my whole team works on bigger projects. That's something that I really think is important for the team, regardless of level. Like,
agreed.
I think if you're just answering tickets the entire week with no project or nothing that you're working on that has like a little bit of a bigger scope, that can be really daunting.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't feel like you're making as big of a difference, even though I will say that is making a huge difference to answer that many tickets.
Yeah.
So, this person on my team who's recently been promoted to this role, it's really exciting because she's getting to sink her teeth into helping with certain things. Like our operations team that we work really closely with is in Brazil. And so we really wanted someone to like help with the communication there and making sure that our team is in the know about anything that might be important to tell customers and things like that. So she's, spearheading that. And we're also working on white glove delivery for certain things. So she's working on that. So there's all sorts of things within CX. And I think it's exciting because as our complexity as a company grows, my team will grow. And there will be opportunities for all sorts of customer facing, or not even customer facing, but customer centric projects and opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think you actually made a really, really, really good point about the fact that like, even if you have team members who are in the queues and that's like, maybe they're a CX associate and like that's technically like one of their daily responsibilities, bringing those people into other projects, because that's going to allow your team and those team members to upskill themselves.
Absolutely.
And then you as a leader are able to distinguish what their strengths and weaknesses are.
Definitely. And it's a really fun time to get to explore other aspects of the business and see what, like, because some people really like writing, some people really like data, some people don't know yet. So it's fun to, have them take on a couple of different projects in their first few months to see like what clicks with them.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What exciting, like I know we mentioned Hark, right?
Yeah.
But like what exciting like CX tools have you seen like that have really have driven interest for you, or you've like incorporated that has moved the needle for you?
Well, the first one that comes to mind, we haven't technically launched yet, but I'm really excited about. It's called Bridge.
Oh, I love Bridge.
Yeah.
I'm friends with
Kate.
Yeah,
you know Bridge.
Yeah.
Yes. So I am really excited about that. That also works well in conjunction with Hark. That's actually how I got connected to Bridge. Yeah. But it's been really fun. So for anyone who doesn't know, Bridge is basically a platform that helps you build out experiences for your customers through QR codes.
Yeah. And
for us, this has been really exciting. And this has been something I've been thinking about before I even knew Bridge existed for a while, because so many of our products include assembly manuals.
Yes.
So thinking about like a QR code on the assembly manual that the customer that will bring the customer to, a
different
landing
type of
page,
experience.
basically.
Yeah.
So for us, we're building out these different experiences for our products one by one, that will have, assembly videos perhaps, and FAQs and shopping modules and, contact us and all of that.
Yeah.
And I think this is so cool because it's just a catered experience for the customer. And I have to hand it to Bridge. Their platform's amazing because the initial setup honestly wasn't even that hard. But then once you set up one experience, it's just,
and then you want to do another.
You want to do more, but also they're so much easier once you have like some of the modules already set up.
Totally.
So it's cool how quickly you can move on those sorts of things.
Totally. And I think even from your warranty perspective too, you can set up different types of experiences for that per product.
Yes.
I utilized Bridge initially at Feastables, but like when we launched, before we had a QR code, we always had a QR code, but it was like a link tree. And and Feastables is very much like a digital business, like a digital experience, right? Because it's like from a creator, Mr. Beast, who like is seen on the internet. So I wanted to create that experience for those customers, but I wanted to distinguish it between like, this is when we were launching into like Walmart or in Target and like further retail, and then also internationally. So some really cool stuff. And I'm just telling you this as a hot tip. Internationally, and we set up different experiences. And like, cause like, I mean, Canada, for instance,
Yeah.
right? Like French Canadian,
Yeah.
you can set up a French version.
Yeah.
You know?
That's really cool. I think Bridge is awesome. I'm really loving working with them. I said we haven't launched yet because we have the experiences set up, but the assembly manuals haven't been sent to customers yet.
Got it.
So technically we're not seeing how that's going yet.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited about it. I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
And that's just another way of thinking about customer experience that doesn't necessarily mean the customer's contacting us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, totally. It's like, well, that's the whole point of like CX, right? It's
Right.
not just about like support. It's like,
Right.
what touch points can I establish like a connection with that customer
Yeah.
so that I'm answering questions before they become questions.
Exactly. How can I set the customer up for success? And if they just are able to scan this QR code to get all the information they need about their product, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you would know the answer to this one, but I am curious because it's like your products are very, like beginning of life and then kids'
Yeah.
life, right? How do you guys think of retention?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think that for the most part with baby customers, a lot of customers have like one big purchase in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Or as we were talking about with registries,
Yeah.
a lot of people are buying gifts for them.
Yeah.
But I think with retention, it's interesting because, of course, we're different than like a company that has like a subscription model or
Yeah.
anything like that. And I think retention is an interesting thing to think about because we also have to think about what products the customer needs
yeah.
later. And so that's why it's been fun to launch. We've launched like some play things.
Yeah.
So like we just launched mini chairs yesterday.
Oh, wow.
And there's these super cute little foam chairs that kids can sit in. They're tiny, but they can like throw them around, jump on them, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's good for like a child that's, I think, a year plus.
Yeah.
So that's like a nice product for a customer to get later versus
Yeah.
something that's super crib focused they probably already have.
Yeah.
And then I think expanding our play assortment is
Mhm.
definitely part of that. So we have like play tables and like a little like book nook and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think that an important part of retention is actually having products that customers need.
Yeah.
Because after the initial purchase of, the sleeping and maybe the dresser, like what else do they need?
Yeah. And pairings, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
What could be like just interesting is just like collaborations with like other like crib companies,
Mhm.
like not crib specific, but
Yeah.
crib accessories.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was just like thinking about because again, my Amanda example, but
Yeah.
I was thinking about how like when you get the crib and then you have the baby monitors and then you have like the little like
There's so much that
nightlight
goes
things.
onto it. Yeah,
Right,
very true. Yeah.
But I think that's a cooler way to think of retention, right? Like it's not just about like email campaigns.
Right.
It's like, no, like we want to be a part of your child's life and
Yeah.
your life. So like let's keep producing
What
products so
else
that
do you
you're
wanna
in the
see?
loyalty.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Because of course you can keep buying sheets, but at a certain point you have enough sheets.
Yeah. You're good with the 5.
Yeah.
You know what I
exactly,
mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Well, we've actually hit the end of the road.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that flew.
I know. But I really appreciate you coming on because I think your philosophies, actually, before we even hit the end of the road, leave the audience with one note. What's your CX philosophy in like one sentence?
Consider the customer with kindness at every touch point.
Yes. Yes. We love that. That's some like ASMR, CX ASMR. I love that. Well, Lauren, I really appreciate you coming on. Can you tell the audience where, 1, they can find Nestig?
Yeah.
And 2, where can they find you?
Yeah. So Nestig is at nestig.com. So that's Nestig. And then we also are on Instagram and TikTok, I think, although I'm not on TikTok. I think our Instagram handle is at Nestig, same thing, Nestig. TikTok, I believe, is the same, or maybe Nestig Baby. Sorry, marketing team. And me, I'm on LinkedIn, Lauren Schorr, last name Schorr, Schorr.
Thank you. And we'll put everything in the show notes. And I appreciate everybody for tuning in. And we'll catch you next week.
Dang, we've made it to the end of the podcast and you're still here. So thank you so much for listening to Above the Fold podcast. For the best of this episode and every episode, be sure to follow us on Instagram and my YouTube channel. And for deeper dives on the secrets to brand success, don't forget to subscribe to my weekly newsletter, Sunday Postcards. All right, my dudes and gals, see you next week.